Hey everybody, it's Dylan here. I am a real estate agent in Charlotte, North Carolina with Tate Realtors, and I'm guessing you've probably used Zillow before, right? And if you have, I'm guessing you've probably used it to figure out how much a home was worth that you were planning on buying, or you used it to see how much your home was worth. If you fall into one of those two categories, and I'm assuming most of us do if we've used Zillow before, then you have probably looked at the Zestimate. As a realtor, I feel almost a sense of duty to address the Zestimate because I know how widely it's used and I know how it's trusted, and I just want to make sure that everyone knows all the facts of the Zestimate to ensure that the tool is being used properly. Also, keep in mind that Zillow has been going through some changes when it comes to the structure of their company, so they may be changing how they do their Zestimates in the future to make them more accurate, but as of right now, 2021, this is how it works. I should also state prior to this video even really getting started that it may come across a bit negative towards Zillow, but in actuality, I'm not trying to come at Zillow and say, get your life together or anything like that. The truth is, this tool is actually very helpful, and the fact that they're offering it is really great. So let's talk a little bit about the Zestimate and when/if you should trust it. So here's my first point. Zillow actually states that there are inaccuracies within their Zestimates. So because there are inaccuracies, we have to treat it the way it was intended, as a tool. We can't take this as an in-depth house review. What's interesting is this is actually what Zillow is wanting to accomplish with their Zestimate. So go ahead and pause the video so you can read the whole thing. And in this statement, we can see that Zillow's intention is actually for the Zestimate to be a starting point, not the end all that I think a lot of people actually use it as. So Zillow has released statistics for their accuracy details for specific areas around the country. So we're actually going to look at some examples of certain areas within the country and their accuracy details when it comes to the Zestimate. This information is public. You can go look at this information. It may be updated since I took this screenshot, but essentially this can be accessed by anyone, and it probably should be looked at because it's important details to know about the Zestimate. So because I live in Charlotte, let's actually use Charlotte as the example. And this is actually one of the better performing estimates in terms of their statistics. So this slide is actually based on the houses that are currently listed in the Charlotte market. The last three categories there are what are key in terms of showing the accuracy. So Zillow reported that 87.4% of houses are within 5% of the sales price, which is not too bad, although when a house is listed, I'd imagine that number should be a little closer, but that's not a huge deal. When you get to 10% and 20%, it's in the high 90s, so the majority of the time they're always going to be within 10 to 20% of the sales price, so long as the house is listed within Zillow. It's still not perfect, but it's still good. However, let's look at this. These are the houses that are not listed on the housing market or considered off market, and yikes. To break this down, 40.6% of houses are actually estimated within 5% of what the sales price would be. Less than 50%, so definitely not what you'd be looking for. Then we get to 10% within the sales price, and we jump all the way up to 63.7%. Still not quite comfortable. But once we get to 20%, it has to be better, right? Not by much. It's only 83.3%. Zillow is saying that there are around 17% of houses out there that are not accurate past 20% of the actual sales price if they're not listed. Now, I get them being a bit critical and harsh here on Zillow, but it's really not their fault. They're only working with the information that they have. My only hope in showing you this information is to prove the point that Zestimates cannot be relied on as the actual estimate of a house or the projected sales price of a house. So let's talk a little bit about how it works. I would say that most people assume that the Zestimate is generally accurate, right? So knowing that, most people would also be able to figure out that Zillow is using some sort of algorithm to be able to spit out the Zestimates for each individual home. But Zillow can only work with what they're given. So if a house has never actually been listed and Zillow has no home details on that house, then there's a good chance they're gonna be off by a good margin. But if a house has been recently listed and there's a lot of comparables around it, and Zillow is able to pull from all of that information as well as the home details to then spit out a proper Zestimate, it's going to be more accurate. And when Zillow is calculating the Zestimate, it's looking at these four primary categories. Now, if Zillow had all these categories, there's a good chance they could come up with an okay projected sales range, but to be honest, it's still not specific enough for anyone wanting to buy a house or sell their own house. you could still be off by 5% or so, even if Zillow had all of this information, which that can make a huge difference in your sales price. Also, I'm gonna get on my soapbox here for a minute about something that Zillow does when they're evaluating their Zestimates that I just do not agree with. If Zillow has no sold comparables, then they'll just search a nearby neighborhood, utilize that neighborhood if it has a house that is listed, and then evaluate it for floor plan, bedrooms and bathrooms, square footage, all of those different things that would normally be incorporated in a comparable. Now, if you were in town and you were driving over from a neighborhood over of a house that you were looking at, then that would make a little bit more sense. You could see how the neighborhood was upkept. You could see the exterior of the house. Has it been taken well care of? You can kind of tell those things in person. Zillow doesn't have that capability. And that's just not a great piece to be missing, because in Charlotte, you could be in a beautiful neighborhood that's extremely well kept. The lawns are manicured, all of that, and drive 5 minutes away into another neighborhood that's really close by, but it's not well kept. It's got overgrown lawns, it's got trash on the streets, and you can really tell that there's a difference between the two neighborhoods, and it is a different value between the two neighborhoods as well. So because Zillow's not driving through the neighborhood of the house that you're looking at and then going to drive through the neighborhood that they're counting as a comparable, it's just not a great process to really be able to project a sales price. And okay, that is all I have to say on that. So don't hear what I'm not saying. I think you should still use Zillow, and I think you should use it for the purpose that it's intended, which is to be a tool. And I honestly think it's a great tool. If Zillow has the proper information and they've been able to evaluate sold comparables recently and nearby, they can get this estimate really close, and it's free. But the problem arises when Zillow doesn't have all of that information and people trust the tool like it does have all of that information. So I think Zillow really said it perfectly, and you should use it for what it is. It is a starting point. So if you can gather that Zillow has enough data to be fairly accurate, and you like the number that you see, and maybe you want to buy that house or sell your house, then now what it's time to do is bring in a realtor or maybe an appraiser and get the actual market value of the home. And with that, you may be saying, well, doesn't that cost money? And Zillow is free. And to that I say, it depends. Most appraisers are going to charge for any appraisal that they do. Realtors don't always charge for a CMA. It's normally included in the service that they offer. The truth is, if you're really serious about buying or selling, then it's time to bring in a realtor. And that could be a friend that you have, because I'm sure they would want to help you. Or you could DM me, and I would be happy to help you, because it's really important that you feel confident moving into your next step. So then what's the alternative that I recommend to a Zestimate? It is a CMA or an appraisal. And what's funny about this is Zillow actually recommends that as well. They say to get a CMA or an appraisal to know the true value of your home, because they know the Zestimates aren't fully accurate. And I'm sure you know there's differences between a CMA and an appraisal, and that is important to know, but I'll talk more about that in a future video. But for right now, let's just view it as they're both ways to be able to get a more personal and accurate estimate of the home value. So CMAs and appraisals, they evaluate a ton of different pieces of the home that you're looking at. But I want to talk about 3 of those pieces, those being updates, location, and comparables. These 3 categories will not always be included together when looking at a Zestimate, because if you want to go see a neighborhood, you got to drive through that neighborhood to really get a good grip on the value of that neighborhood. Or if a house is newly updated, what did they do to actually update it? Were they value adds or not? Is there anything else that needs to be updated? And then comparables I've kind of already hit on, but I feel like I need to share one more thing about this because I think it's so important. And it's that comparables need to be based on recently sold properties. The reason I say it needs to be sold properties is because that gives the truest form of a market value. It actually gave someone an opportunity to say, what are you willing to pay? And then they actually followed through and paid that. A listing price is close, but what if no one is actually willing to pay that? What if the house is actually worth a lot less than the listing price is? Or maybe it's worth a lot more, but the listing price is low in order to entice a bidding war. So this is really one of the key differences I see between a CMA/appraisal and the Zestimate. One other note about the CMA and appraisals is that if you have one of those, you now have a competitive edge of knowing what the true value of the home is. You now have all the information to know what would be a competitive bid and a smart bid, or you have the expectations to know what your house should actually sell for. So that's mostly what I want to talk about when it comes to Zestimates, but I'm going to give you a little bit of bonus content here. So did you know that you can actually change your Zestimate? It's true. If you go into Zillow and you claim the property that is your home, you can verify that the property is yours, and then you can actually update all of those things that Zillow uses to determine the Zestimate. Things like bedroom, bathroom, how many square feet, all of those things you can go in and update. And that's another reason that the Zestimates aren't always the most accurate. This is a bit of a rare situation, but someone could be indicating that they think something is a bedroom or a certain room is a bedroom, but it actually doesn't meet the codes to be considered a bedroom. And so that can mess with the Zillow Zestimate as well. So normally if you do decide to go in and do this, it's probably only going to help your Zestimate become more accurate. Rarely, if ever, is it going to actually hinder that. Like I said, if somebody puts in misinformation, then it'll hinder it. But if you've got correct information, it'll help your Zestimate be more accurate. Not really the main point, but a little bit of bonus content for you there. So like I said, this video may come across a little negative towards Zillow, but I'm telling you, my honest truth is that I actually really do enjoy the Zestimate tool. I recommend using the Zestimate tool, but you have to use it properly. You have to use it like Zillow intended it. It is a starting point. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe for more content, drop a comment if you want to talk down there. And also if there's something that you're interested in, you want me to make a video on, I would love to hear that and I'd love to make a video on it. And if you're looking for an agent to be able to help you buy or sell a house, then hit me up. I'd love to help. And even if you're not in Charlotte, I've got a network that allows me to be able to help you get connected to great realtors in your area. So I hope you have a fantastic day and I will see you soon.